Okay, so the right, I think the best you could hope for would be to be kind to them. Yes, if you were middle class or above, you would have been that probably in this civilization. Presentism is judging history by modern liberal standards. It's called presentism or presentism. So, yes, as much as I had to grapple with that very horrible idea, that just like everyone in the West, or nearly everyone, has maybe, even if they turn vegetarian, they may have eaten meat at some point. So I think, yes, if you were, you know, middle or above class, probably you would. But as I say, the thing is to copy his example and be kind to them. That's the best you could hope for. Now remember that there was no anti-slavery movement. That was a very rare. That happened only in the 1800s and only in the West. Yeah, so well, 1700s and 1800s, but again only in the West. This guy, you would, the best you could hope for was to copy his example and be kind to them. So yeah, very dark, but again, like eating meat, everyone will have done it at some point if you were in that civilization. Now, these guys, this society, they were the last, at least in the Western world, the last civilization of the antiquity period, the ancient world. They were the last civilization, the ancient world, at least in the West. And the collapse was a very slow motion collapse, took a very extremely long time. It is looking like Christianity may have very helped to push that collapse. Internal corruption was probably the number one biggest thing that collapsed it, but Christianity, I think, as well. Um, yes. So yes, you would have been, if you were in the right circumstance within that civilization, you would have been one of these. I am sorry. Me too, possibly. But as I say, the best you could hope for, the best morality you could hope for was to be kind. Everything was based on this labour. Everything. The building of the Flavian Amphitheatre, which everyone calls so-called the Colosseum, but official title Flavian Amphitheatre, built by that. Just basically everything. So yeah, in society, really, to be honest. And they didn't have electricity or modern machinery, but by the standards of the day, they had high civilization. If you compare to the say hunter-gatherers or cave people, but that's another story that we don't go into just for the time being. But yeah, given the right environment, you would have been one in this civilization, probably. Me too, as I say. So that's very, again, it's presentism that makes people feel liberal and say, no, I wouldn't. It's like, no, you would. But as I say, you try and be kind. Because remember, you have no moral foundation to even base it on, because the anti-slavery movement didn't exist until the early modern era, the Enlightenment era, you know. So yeah. So just got that on DVD, and it came out when I was a teenager, but we'll just go through just the story of these two who become friends, and it's, you know, it's very vicious, extremely bloodthirsty, but again, you can compare this. You know, if you want a modern day example in the West, yeah, there's your example. So there's a modern time period example, yeah, that you can compare it to. Again, you can pretend it doesn't exist if you want, but it does, and the pretending only makes it worse, but whatever. So, yeah, these two people end up becoming friends. They're in the military service, and this one, I think he's higher class. He ends up becoming a politician, I think, at some point. Spoiler. Anyway, I haven't seen it. I'm just guessing all this stuff. But yeah. This is just about non-electric equipment, but anyway. Rome HBO. Very dark conclusions here. But as I say, this is the Enlightenment. This is the highest form of Enlightenment period you can get during that time era. So, and this antiquity just means the ancient world, the ancient period. And these were the last, at least in the West, the last ancient civilization. Yeah, and these two guys, I know they become mates, but I don't really know what happens because I've only seen a couple of episodes of the final series, and that was like a very long time ago. So I remember almost nothing from it, to be honest. It'll be interesting though. So yes, presentism or presentism. Judging the history by modern liberal standards, or projecting and forcing the modern liberal standards on history, completely illogical and makes no sense. Because people will do that to this time period too. certain things discussed about normal culture, and they'll look back and say how insane it was, but no one can see it at the time, or no one cares to see it. So, yes. Type of relativism, I'd say. So yeah, Rome HBO. These two guys, and I suppose in certain in a environment that brutal, you either, what's the word? Make or break. You either go under, get crushed by it, the darkness, or you get on with it. There's the two. Just like the World War II, you know, with the Soviet camps and things. You either get on, like Solzhenitsyn kind of stuff, you get on with it, or you collapse under the pressure of the dark forces. That seems to be the only two ways, really. Because there's multiple modern examples from modern time periods. This one is obviously the nowadays example, and then the Soviet system in the 20th century. That was another example, which, you know, anyway. So, no, he was in The Knight's Tale playing a HEMA guy before this, but this is, I think, this one of his very big, one of the things that made him much more put on the map in terms of acting. I would say, I'm not an expert in that, but I would guess that made him much more well known in the acting world, or whatever. Again, just a hunch, but yeah. So that's just a bit about Rome HBO. And about this. I'll just put a plural on it. So, yeah. They didn't have modern conceptions of race, but that doesn't mean, again, with presentism, that you go full steam ahead on liberal mode and then say, well, they thought, you know, like, I don't... Obviously they didn't have modern Western science and Darwinism and etc., but they had city-states. They didn't so much have what you would think of as a nation-state, and they had empires. It's funny how they miss out the middle bit. So they go from city-state to empire, and republic to an empire, but no, so you could have a Republican politician to an emperor, but no king, so they seem to skip out the middle, whether it's city-state to empire, or Republican to emperor. They skip out the middle, which is the king or the nation-state. Very interesting, and they go from small to big. Fascinating. But yes, JP does point out this very interesting thing, that everyone thinks of themselves as the good guy, the oppressed freedom fighter hero, but no one wants to think. I mean, everyone's ancestors probably have some trace of that somewhere. Regardless of nationality, every nationality and culture has done that. Not just, you know, West, but anyway. But yeah, we're not talking about the triangular trade anyway. You know. And even if it was to be talked about, you're not allowed to say who ran it. But anyway. Yes. Happy WNY. And when it's Feb, happy ANY when it's February. So yeah. But anyway, this is a slow video and I don't really care. I was gonna, to be honest, give up on the channel, but I don't know why I'm not, to be honest. Nothing else to do, I suppose. No other way to make a living, whatever that means. So, Room HBO. We all would have been one given the right environment, as horrible as that is, and the best morality ethics you can get is to be kind to them. And you look up this guy for examples. And also, Marcus Aurelius talks about a similar thing, treating them well. So, they never seem to have jaguars in the Flavian Amphitheatre, although they're South American, so they never obviously came across it. And that would be very interesting. So, yes, presentism, a form of relativism, a sort of weapon for the New Age education system to attack, things without logic. So, yeah, the Gladius sword. You could have many substyles, almost like the ancient Rome katana, Gladius. And there was for officers, there was that. It's basically a Gladius blade with like a posh hilt or a fancy hilt, like an upper class hilt, a very decorated one for high status officers. But blade style very similar to that, really. But you could have, like your basic bog standard model, all the way up to things with like silver inlaid hilts and Latin inscription on the blade. Again, like Asian writing on a katana, like Asian calligraphy on a katana sword. But you'd have Latin inscription on the Gladius. So you could have very highly developed. And it's interesting that the Sparta sword is higher tech than the Gladius, and yet the systems management of the empire was much poorer as the Sparta developed, even though the technology is higher. A bit like our period now, where systems management's gone very poor, very down the pan, and yet technology has gone up, but systems management's gone way down into the dumps. So you can have almost infinite substyles, dozens upon tons and tons and tons of examples of many, just like the Japanese katana, many examples of substyles, sub-varieties. You know, you could have your wooden hilt, bone hilt, ivory hilt, silver, gold, jewellery inlaid, and then your inscription on it in Latin if you wanted. And then there's the four. There's the Fulham, the Mains, the Hispanius, and the Pompeii style with the triangular tip. So there's the four basic styles. And there may be some non-major styles of katana blade as well. But yeah, it's just interesting when you put a limit on certain that you can get mini infinities. You want? See? 3, 4. So, do you know, I've thought about just put a question mark, but I mean an autistic one, I don't mean a normal person one. And I don't mean that to get at anyone, I just mean it as a factual, neutral statement, like this black and white thing, you know, with ND, very black and white thing, you know, and it's like, I don't want to, but I am really exhausted. But then, when you think, now, maybe people will or won't appreciate this, and this is digging deeper than I've ever digged in psychological terms, but when you think of this, and this, and this again, and what they went through, it would seem like, even though things are very difficult with the whole world stuff, but it would seem like an insult, I suppose. But then, is that just a cop-out, an excuse for my own fear, you know? Yeah, that's the real reason not to want to non-exist, isn't it? For 99.999% of people, even me included, which very rarely am I included in that percentage, very rarely indeed, but to choose, say to self-choose. Say if he's, right? Because the one good thing about the God or the multiverse or the science or the universe or whatever thing you believe to be, is you do get to, for the most part, you do actually get choice. Do you want to, say, flip off and just not do it anymore, or do you want to go on? And then, as I say, this is the real. So this is me not BSing anyone. This is the real reason. It's not because of morality or philosophy or anything. It's pretty much that simple. It's actually kind of in it, in a way. And then if you know how in the Eastern philosophy, how like you can't have non-existence on its own, there'll always be existence and non-existence doing a sort of dance together. So if you got rid of this reality, then maybe you'd have another one, and then again that's not so much fear of death, that's fear of the unknown, or fear of consequence. But yeah, the way God or the universal universe works is to seem to force things on you, which I extremely resent, but maybe that's ego, who knows. I'm not a qualified individual in Western psychology qualifications, but it's probably that. But then to fight the system the way it is, that's not that at all. That's extremely, you know, like white samurai, if you want, you know. So yeah. So if you want to look it up, you look it up. Rome HBO. And if If you don't, you don't. But this is me just trying to not give up on the channel, even though everything's exhausted to the nth degree. Happy WNY.